You are now listening to the Next Iteration podcast with your hosts Fuad and Damien.
Let me predict one thing. The students are not going to lose their mind over this podcast. So I'm not throwing any F-bombs.
Amazing. Okay,
Okay, so we are
cool.
recording, and Fuad, if you'd like, you're all set, Dr. Puri?
Yep.
Excellent.
Amazing. Okay, let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Next Iteration podcast, where we interview some of the most innovative thinkers, in tech and business. And we're very privileged today to have Dr. Ishwar Puri on today. Dr. Ishwar Puri is the Dean of Engineering at McMaster University, where I graduated from and Damien graduated from as well. He's had an amazing career spanning academia, startups, and some hardcore engineering research. And not only is he the Dean of Eng at Mac, he's even amongst the top 5% most cited scientists worldwide on Google Scholar. So, a ton of accolades to his name. He's had a very long and widespreading career. Our combo today will go over sort of his career path, his thoughts on mentorship, and some student crowdsourced questions as well, because they submitted some on Instagram. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started.
Well, thank you very much for having me here. Exciting.
It's a pleasure. It's our pleasure, honestly. And so for a man that has accomplished so much in his life, and I like asking this of people who have just done a bunch of stuff in their life, because it's interesting to see what they tease out as being the most valuable. But what among this pantheon of your accomplishments are you most proud of?
So I think that's a difficult question to answer, right? I think
Absolutely.
that when you reflect on your life, you know that you've done some good things, but at the same time, you're fully focused on the future. That's what drives us. So compared to what I think I should do, what I've accomplished doesn't seem as significant. So that's what really drives me. I think if you ask me to reflect upon certain things in the recent past, I think moving the needle on how we educate students has been a remarkable accomplishment. Moving the needle on innovation has been another accomplishment. And I would say that, when I talk about accomplishments, moving the needle on engineering education or moving the needle on research, one person doesn't do it. Everything is done by teams. So there are lots of efforts, I think, that should be recognized. Unfortunately, when we write these stories based on exceptionalism. And that exceptionalism is that of an individual. The individual came in, they harnessed some creative energies, they did this, they led this. And often forgotten are the people who actually helped do the work. So another way to answer your question, so I'm answering it in three ways. And one is what I've done doesn't seem enough. And number two is, I think I've moved the needle or helped move the needle on education, on research. But a third way I would answer it is that I'm very proud of the teams I've put together, because it's the collective work of all these individuals that has brought me to this juncture. And, Fouad mentioned that I'm ranked in some lists amongst the top 2% of scientists in the world. So thank you very much for that plug. But you have to remember that it's my research group that helped me bring it here. And it's generations. In a university, a generation is equal to 4 years or 5 years or 6 years, right? It's generations of students who went through my lab, they did the original research and taught me things. So what am I really proud of is that I've allowed people to teach me so that I can become better. I think that's one way of answering it.
That's a beautiful way of putting it. And I think something that Damien and I have noticed amongst all high-performing individuals is that you need to have that humility, because, to actually accomplish anything in your life, you need to be able to work in a team. You need to be able to work with different people. And it's just so refreshing to hear that from you. And we expected nothing less. So thank you for that amazing answer. One thing I'm curious about, on the note of teams is, how do you form good teams? like what do you look for in a team when you're constructing your team at, you know, McMaster and a research group, whatever it is, at your startup, which we'll talk about later? What do you look for in a team?
So I think several things. The first thing is that I ascribe to the concept of a team of rivals. Um, you know, when you interview for a job or you have a job, there were many who interviewed for the same job, but they didn't get the job. You got it. But you got it because the people who were searching, the organization, the institution thought that you had something that the others didn't have. And very often, you know, that's some kind of an X factor. That X factor is only good for that moment in time. You know, an organization needs different kinds of leaders at different junctures in its evolution. So, you know, for instance, I could be competitive for a job today, but with the same skill set, I may not be competitive for a job at another organization, you know, next week or next month. So the issue of strategic alignment is very important. That means that in every organization, there are people who could do your job, but they didn't get the job simply because you were viewed as having some kind of an X factor. And those are the rivals, right? You can either freeze them out or you can collaborate with them. And if you collaborate with them and bring them into your team, you have to be prepared to be humble because they come in as your equals because, you know, after all, they aspire to the job and they had aspirations for it. And when you put a team of rivals together, they were rivals before. Your job really is to cement the team so that the rivalry goes away and the collaboration comes out. And so I would say, you know, taking very strong individuals who can speak truth to power is very important for me. After all, I'd like my team members to tell me, hey, you're messing up. Damien asked me to drop an F-bomb. You know, you can put in a substitute for messing up. You'd rather, you know, you'd rather have a team member do that rather than do something really stupid and the world tells you, oh man, you really bleeped up, right?
Yeah.
So
we can
so
put in the bleep
post. So I think you know, the team of rivals is one approach. The second thing that I think you have to do is have a flat leadership structure. Many people want to be like top boss. So if you've gone to meetings in organizations, some people run meetings in a call and response kind of a way. You know, there's a chair running the meeting. Somebody makes a comment, the chair has to make another comment, right? Then somebody else makes a comment, the chair has to make another comment. Mm-hmm. What you have to do is remove yourself with humility and just let people have a conversation. And trust people. Don't micromanage them. Because after all, if they're your team members, you just got to trust them. You know, once in a while they drop the ball and then you'll say, hey, you know, that wasn't cool. But mostly they'll realize they dropped the ball and they'll just come back and say, I'm sorry, I dropped the ball. And that's fine. So I think micromanagement is something that's not useful, particularly with high performers. And I would leave you with saying that the teams should feel like they're part of a coalition. When I came in, I thought that McMaster Engineering was ripe for change. And so, you know, if you think about change management, you have to put together a guiding coalition that has to really understand your vision. So articulating your vision, and they have to be able to tell you where to get the easy win. You know, if you want to go to Mars today, and you know, I know people are thinking about traveling to Mars, or let's say, well, that may be feasible. Well, at least in the movies it was. I think I saw a movie with somebody on Mars not so long ago. Let's say if you want to go to Saturn, right? That's too far away. So maybe you go for the moonshot first, then you go to Mars, and then you say, okay, well, from there, I'm going to go to Saturn. So having a team that helps you establish those easy first wins when you have a long journey for change, I think that's also important.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Puri, but I think one aspect of what I heard in your answer is it's not always about making the right choice. It's about making a choice and making it right. Right. Because like with these people that you're bringing onto the teams, like they're not always going to be stellar as soon as they come on, or, there might be some rocky patches of road along the way. But more often than not, if especially as a leader you're willing to show these individuals that you care about them, that you're willing to help nurture them, that you're willing to help upskill them, level them up, they will go above and beyond for you. Because like you said, like oftentimes like it feels so competitive, like you're just trying to get an edge in here, people are always trying to get a leg on you, like it's a very predatory world to be in. So it's, as sad as it is, it feels like it's rare to have a leader that sees you and cares about you. You often feel like just another number or another employee number.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think you're completely right. What I would say is, there's this analogy that's used in the management literature that before you drive the bus, you have to have the right people in the right seats before you start driving the bus, right? So it's putting the right people in the right seats, knowing how you can mentor them. But I will say that uh, organizations that are notorious for not caring for people, right?
Yeah.
And there are organizations that are lauded for caring for people. And sometimes the ones that are notorious for not caring for people do really well. There's a lot of literature about Amazon and about Walmart, but they seem to be like really, really thriving in this
Yeah.
pandemic world, right? So I would say that the goal is not only success, but the goal is also making the world a better place, right? We have to have core values. So, I mean, I think that, when I came to McMaster Engineering, it was already a good place. It had a good culture, good DNA. My focus was not only in making it a better place, and I think you could sort of extrapolate that to any institution or organization. It's not only making the organization more competitive, more reputable, have more revenue, be more lauded, but it's also maintaining or improving the culture of buy-in. I mean, our world is like very conflicted right now. I mean, if you think about Me Too, Black Lives Matter, Indigenous affairs, Asian hate, right? It looks like we are fractionating into whether we are white or brown or Asian or black. We are fractionating by gender, and we are fractionating by sexual orientation and gender identity and so on. I think that it's very important to have a place that doesn't matter what the color of your skin is or what your gender identity is, that people have a sense of belonging. And, that's hard to do. That's hard to do. Within organizations, we are a microcosm of society, right? We have the same problems that society, we face the same problems that society has. We have similar histories to the rest of society, but all we can do as leaders is try to make our organizations better so that the reflection of our organization is slightly better or much better than the reflection of society, knowing that perfection will take time and that others will come in and do an even better job in moving the organization forward.
Yeah, like I know you're very much a man of community. And I say that because, like Fuad's in engineering, but I come from a background in science. And I mean, to be fair, I do have a lot of engineering friends, but I've seen way more of you than I have of my own dean. Like, I don't even know who the dean of science was. So kudos to you for being a man of community, because even for some of the other initiatives some of my engineering friends have pursued within the school, you were always there at some point, supporting them, throwing some words of encouragement out. So on behalf of all of them, thank you for the work that you've done.
Well, thanks for the compliment. I will tell you, the Dean of Science is a very nice person.
I'm sure they
And
are. Yeah.
maybe I'm just more photogenic. Who knows?
Who know? Yeah,
So,
you do have the
but
face of the camera.
Exactly, especially
well,
with
the
the
Dean of
background and
Science
everything.
is top notch as well.
Mhm. I just wanted
Amazing.
to shift the conversation a bit to academia because obviously you're someone who has spent a ton of time in that world, and I guess to perhaps to start with, it's considering what you were saying about building a more diverse world, getting everybody a seat at the table. Academia is one of those things that is home to the smartest people in the world, right? Full of people coming from different walks of life. And it seems like right now the market is very saturated with PhDs and not enough tenured positions to go around. How were you able to distinguish yourself within this world, right? And like, what advice would you perhaps give to some of the future hopeful academics that are listening to this?
I think that PhD employment is more of a problem in other areas than it is in engineering. So only about less than 10% of our PhD graduates actually go into academia. 90% go into the private or public sector. Most will go into the private sector, right?
Mhm.
So for instance, my last graduate, who was an engineering physics bachelor's and master's student, she did her PhD with me. She did a co-op with Apple in Cupertino and was immediately hired, actually even before she defended her thesis. I have a student who's a PhD student who's going to defend her thesis next month, early July, I think first week of June. And she's doing a co-op with Public Health Ontario, and it looks like they'll probably give her a job. So what I'm saying is that particularly, and I would say, Damien, that might also apply to the sciences, since you're a science graduate, right? Um, what we try to do in a PhD is not make clones of ourselves. It's very important. I'm sorry. Some research groups will make clones of themselves. What I
Mhm.
try to do, and many others do, is not make clones of ourselves. So that our students have skills, right? And the skills that they have are transferable.
Mhm.
They are creative thinkers. They show that they're willing to stay with a problem for about 3-4 years and make like a profound original contribution to solving it. Who wouldn't want somebody like that, right? They've shown that they have the grit. They've shown that they have the smarts. Now I know that when PhDs come out of a group, their primary mentors are really their advisors or supervisors. So they want to be like them, saying, "Hey, why can't I be an assistant professor?" I would tell you that in my research group, the bulk of the individuals actually want to go into the private sector, or they want to launch their own startups. So launching your own startup is scary because you need a safety net, but
Mhm.
going into the private sector is not that difficult. So what did I want to do? I always wanted to be a professor because I wanted to have the space to pursue my creativity, because as a faculty member, um, you can get grants, you can discover things in your lab, and that's what excited me. um, I found I had a talent for it. I had a very hard time landing my first job. I got like, I would say almost 75 or 80 declinations before I got my first position.
Wow.
I applied over maybe 3 years. I was a postdoc and as a senior PhD student. And,
Mhm.
you can think about it, 25 declinations a year, so like 2 a month. I mean, that can be very dispiriting. You need a support group. I mean, my wife,
Mhm.
she was originally my girlfriend, and then my fiance, and then my wife. I mean, she was very
Mhm.
supportive, and she's the best thing that's happened to me. And so I think you need a support group in your life.
Mhm.
We have this myth that we do these things by ourselves. We are all heroes, but you need a supportive family. Not all people have a supportive family. You need a supportive companion. Not all people have a supportive companion. You need supportive friends. it was difficult. My friends who went into the private sector, I was driving this Honda Civic at that time, which was a beat up, used car. And some of my friends were driving, the Mazda Miata had just come out, and they were sort
Oh
of
my
rolling
Oh,
God.
it's a
around in
beauty.
them.
The
Those pop-up
Miata.
headlights. Oh
Beautiful
my
Yeah.
car.
gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm dating myself, right? So and then they had the cars, and you were living in this rental apartment, and, walking up the stairs, and it was dingy, and people had their homes in a backyard, right?
Yeah.
So it was, and the first few years of a professor's life are very difficult because you have to work towards something called tenure. So you need a support system, and I think that the support system I had was a good one. And
Mhm.
I was also an immigrant, right? So and as an immigrant, you're hungry because you have no social net, right? My parents weren't with me; they were in India, and so I think it's a confluence of things. I think um, native born people are also hungry. I don't want us to get into that whole fragmentation debate. You asked me about myself. I was an immigrant. I was hungry. I had a chip on my shoulder. This is many years ago. I lived in a basically white society, but I was not a white person. And so there was this whole thing like, damn it, I'm going to work harder, and I'm going to show everybody that I'm as smart, if not smarter, and I'll be successful. So it's a lot of internal drive. It's some external inputs. I think all of us are smart, right? There are so many things that lead to success. And one of the things that leads to success is serendipity, that somebody believes in you. So I told you my wife believed in me, right? She still does. We've been together for more than 30 years.
Amazing.
And I hope it goes for another 35, if not more. But I had mentors who believed in me. They thought, wow, this fellow's really smart. We need to promote him, we need to champion him. So I would say you ask for advice, right? Have a supportive network, believe in yourself, have some internal drive, network with people, the kind of people who are not going to put you down because you have a funny accent, or because you look different, because you're not blonde or brunette, or whatever. You don't fit somebody's phenotype of what handsome is. And I think those champions in the long term are really going to help you. They're really going to help you. So
Mhm.
another thing which is important, I would say here, is the pay it forward. I've been so fortunate. People have really helped
Absolutely.
me. People have really
Mhm.
helped me advance in my career. And I would say the advice I give to others is look out for people who want to pay it forward. And then when you succeed, pay it forward
Mhm.
by
Mhm.
adopting, championing other people because somebody did it for you.
Amazing. I think you touched on so many points. First off, the point about the immigrant story and having the chip on your shoulder. I think there was a study done recently that showed out of the billion-dollar unicorn companies in the US, billion-dollar startups, I think 70 or 80% of them were either started by an immigrant or the child of an immigrant, which is insane, right? Because I think, not to get into the debate whether someone works harder or not, right? We don't want to get into fractionalizing things here, but I think that having that mentality of wanting to work hard, having that chip on your shoulder, having something to prove really, really inspires you and can take you through some of those darkest moments and grittiest moments. So yeah, really, really, really
Yeah.
resonated with that. Yeah.
My kids always tell me how messed up they are because you're an immigrant's children. How much
I'm the child
insecurity
of
I put
immigrants as
into
well,
them.
so can definitely empathize with them.
Mhm.
Anyways, so the second part of your question too about mentorship, I think that fascinates me. Mentorship has been so important in my career. I'm only 22, just starting it out, but it's already been so impactful in my career. And we actually got a lot of questions on this, from sort of the Instagram community. So one thing I wanted to ask you is, who helped guide a young Dr. Puri? Who were your mentors, and how did you find them? And the second part of that question is, how should, young engineers in this day and age find those mentors?
I think that people are eager to be mentors. There are some pros and cons. The pros are that uh, so mentoring comes not only that you walk up to someone and say, hey, will you be my mentor? Mentoring also comes from chemistry, right? I mean, if two people are a good fit on paper as mentor and mentee, they may not be a good fit based on personal chemistry, right? So I think that personal chemistry is very important. I think asking people saying, hey, can I meet with you from time to time because I want to learn from you is a good thing. I think observing people is very good. That's called experiential learning. I was surrounded by very successful people all through my career. And I would say even getting out of your bubble, the mentors I have mentors today, and not, some are at McMaster, but many of them are outside. They are across the world. So getting out of your bubble and having a wide variety of mentors whom you meet during the course of your work, or during the course of your life, I think that's very important. What I will say is that it's important not to have mentors who are competitive with you, because they will then be very harsh and might bring you down, right? So it's very, very important to have mentors who pick you up. They give you very sound advice. They tell you how it is, but they don't sort of grind you down. And I'd say that choice is very important. I will also say that life is about experiential learning. So some mentors work and some don't, and I think people just have to go into it headlong and find out, what kind of personality is a good fit for them, what kind of personality is not. If you don't try it, you won't find out. But find somebody who has good core values, who's not going to harass you either emotionally or sexually, and they'll be, a true guide by the side during your career. And I've been very fortunate to have people. With mentoring also, you have to be humble, right? Because sometimes a mentor will say something and you'll get in an argument with them. Well, they're giving you free advice, it's worth what it is. If you don't like it, walk away. There's no point sort of getting into an argument over whether that's good advice or not good advice. You don't have to take it.
So who are some of the mentors that you still go to for advice these days?
Oh, I believe in 360-degree mentoring, Paul, in the sense that there are those above me who mentor me. So these would be people who have much more experience than me. There are people on the side who have similar experience to me, with whom I can, I can exchange ideas, for instance. So one thing, which the Ontario Deans do is that we have a social every other week because Zoom makes it very easy, where everybody brings a local beer and then you show it on these little Zoom tiles and you drink beer and you discuss your issues, right? So
you guys are party
amazing.
animals.
That's right. Absolutely.
You guys are getting wild.
Yeah. Engineering deans are wild.
Oh, I can imagine.
Oh man, we have to do a part 2 episode where we go through those dirty stories.
and so that's like 180-degree mentoring on the side. And then there are people who work for you. They've been awesome mentors to me. They've taught me so much. And so I think that this 360-degree mentoring has been very important. I won't name them because, if I miss out someone, then the other person will say, hey, I thought I was a mentor.
For sure.
Right.
And so I think be humble and have 360-degree mentoring. I mean, I'm sure if I hung out with you folks and we went to a cafe, had a coffee or a libation that was a little stronger, I'd learn something, right? You teach me something. Be open to learning. simply because there's an experience divide between us. We're in different sectors, different stages of life, different ages. Doesn't mean that I can't learn from you.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
so I'd say that 360-degree mentoring is very, very important to me.
So it sounds like we're just one coffee chat away from starting a startup together. That's what I'm
All
hearing.
right, you know
So,
what? That'd be a dream come true.
amazing.
Absolutely have to.
Okay, so I have a bit of a weird question for you now, just because I see you reflecting on your life so far. And this question, it's something that I've been thinking about recently, just because, like both Fuad and I, like obviously still being very young, we're still at a stage in our life where, sometimes I'm sure you've had this too when you were younger, and this is why I'm asking, but we have these moments where you'll be laying in your bed late at night, your head is just in the clouds, you're thinking about life, what's to come, what does the future hold for you, what are you going to accomplish, what are you going to do, are you going to make your parents proud, are you going to make yourself proud? And it's this mix of excitement, a little bit of nervousness because of what's to come and the uncertainty surrounding it. What do you have those moments still
Oh
at
yeah.
all? And like, what do those moments look like? What goes through your heads and goes through your head?
I mean, the thing is that I told you I'm an immigrant, and my parents were refugees,
Mm-hmm.
in India.
Mhm.
There was bitterness in the 1940s. And so they gave me a sense of insecurity. So that sense of insecurity was that you had to be successful. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been very
Mm-hmm.
careful not to pass on that to my children, although, sometimes I find myself regressing when I'm in conversations with them. It leads to very interesting dinner conversations when everyone is home and with people getting upset and so
Right.
on.
For
So I
sure.
become better at it over the years. But I think that, I have that insecurity even now. Am I successful enough? Right?
Mm.
When I was growing up in India, there were these two English words that I grew up in a Hindi speaking and a Punjabi speaking family. And there were these two words that people used, English words they used. One was success and one was settle. You had to settle down,
Mm.
and you had to be successful. And you can interpret that in many different ways. So, when I reflect, we're all creatures of our environment. So, Damien, you're a creature of your environment, and you've had these environmental inputs. So, there are probably keywords, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I reflect on what's happened, I sometimes cringe at the choices I made. I made some bad choices, and I get embarrassed personally thinking about them, and I try to block them out of my mind.
Mhm.
Oh, gee, I shouldn't have done that.
Got
And
plenty
some
of
of the
them.
things, the episodes that sometimes come to me are from like 20 years ago or 25 years ago, right? Before you were born. So I think we carry baggage.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes when I think of the road ahead, I have aspirations, and I sort of get a little despondent, like, what's the road to those aspirations? How can I close the deal?
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't learned it, but if I had to give myself advice, I would say be patient. That's, our greatest strength is also our greatest weakness. My greatest strength is that I'm impatient. I want change. I want things to happen now. And that's also my greatest weakness, because it makes me insecure. It makes me rush things sometimes. There are times of deliberation and there are times of building. And so I would say, that when I look to the future and project the future, I look at a runway, and I feel sometimes I'm, not even out of the gate. I'm not even taxiing down the runway, because you want to be up at the end of the runway and flying. I mean, that's when accomplishment is. So you're not alone in having these thoughts. I mean, I have these thoughts, and you gave me a lot of praise, both Fawad and you, when you started out. But I can tell you that's not how I look at myself. I measure myself against what I think I should be doing, And sometimes, when I'm with my wife, she'll bolster my spirits. But sometimes when I'm alone, I'm thinking, man, you know, what the heck have you been doing all this time? You need to sort of step it up a little bit and amp it up. Mixed in with all this is luck, serendipity. So what you will see is that you have friends who are as smart as you, or maybe not as smart as you, who are as hardworking as you, or maybe not as hardworking as you, but luck or chance has given them something that you don't have, right?
Mhm.
And so luck is very important. I mean, some people, they use luck to their advantage, and things just line up. So where I am today and where you will be, both of you, has to do not only with your intrinsic capabilities, but it will do with the habits you create for yourself, the network you have, the champions you have, and just sheer dumb luck. An opportunity will come by, you'll grab it, and some people will say, I don't know why you're doing that, you know, uh, and you'll grab it. And then, a year or two later, they'll say, wow, that foul, that Damien, my God, they're
Yeah, we
like
call them
odds.
we call them haters. That's what the kids these days are called, haters. Yeah,
Yeah, there's always going to be haters around you for sure.
Yeah.
absolutely.
uh, I love how you at the beginning of this conversation you made the distinction between comparing yourself to your past achievements and projecting yourself. And I think we've done a good job of kind of going over your past achievements now. So now I want to pivot the conversation into the future and some of the goals you have. So another crowdsourced question I think that ties in really well with this. What goals do you have for MacEng in the upcoming years?
I think McCain has come a long way. If you've looked at its reputation, it's now ranked fifth by program reputation in Canada. I mean, I would certainly like it to be top three.
Mm-hmm.
Our reputation in the world is improving, but reputation is one thing and outcomes are one thing. I just want superb outcomes for our students. So we've recently pivoted from just traditional teaching and learning. Traditional teaching and learning is very industrial scale learning. You bring in a cohort of 1,000 students, you put them on a conveyor belt, you have them take this class, that class. Then there are these quality control inspectors who say, okay, this person can go ahead, this person can't. You throw the others away into a recycling bin. They can come back or they can leave, depending on the nature. And then that cohort goes on to second year, same thing happens. And at the end of 4 years or 5 years, you put the cohort into a box, you tie a ribbon and say, okay, this is a quality product, right? I mean, that's a very industrial way of doing things. I'm obviously being very harsh when I look at the education process, but I think sometimes you have to use a harsh metaphor in order to drive change. We use very high stakes assessments, right? Oh, you got a 50, you got a 70, you can go ahead, you can't. And really, I think we should focus not on assessments, but on learning. So one of the arguments I keep having with faculty members and with others is actually, I had one even with my own kids the other night. This was one of our routine controversial discussions around the dinner table whenever we can get together. We have very high stakes assessments. Now, so if somebody fails a test, you know, uh, is the objective to say you failed the test, or is the objective that you should have learned? If you should have learned, why don't we give them another chance, right? Because, I mean, I think of students as being vessels, and you have to fill the vessel, right? An assessment tells you that the vessel is not full. Assessments are notorious, high stakes assessments are notoriously inaccurate. I mean, somebody may be in a bad mood, they may not have slept well, they may be nervous, they didn't do well on an assignment or on a homework or on a quiz or a midterm or a final, right? So I think that what I want to do is I want to move the needle on that, and I want to make sure that we assess students and we give them multiple chances to learn. Now, if somebody is lazy, and if somebody really is incapable of learning, then of course you leave them behind. But I think that that you focus on learning. We've been doing that. So when I came, only about 8 out of 10 students, less than 8 out of 10 students made it from first year engineering to second year engineering. Can you believe that?
Oh,
So,
wow.
so
Yeah.
one
I
out
know
of
that. Yeah.
one out of 5 did not make it to second year. Actually,
Mm.
it was more than that. Last year, 991 out of 1,000 students made it from first to second year.
Amazing.
So previously, it was
Yeah.
less than 800 out of 1,000, right?
Yeah.
It was 770 or something. But last year, 991 students made it into second year.
Wait, so
So
what
I want
changed
to.
there? Sorry, what changed there? I'm just curious because like
So the
it's
change is
remarkable.
that you need a scaffold for students to do better. You need professors to be more involved in students' education. You need academic advisors, sufficient number of academic advisors, where the academic advisors are not just bureaucrats telling you, yeah, you can take this, you can't take this, but they can actually sit down with you and solve your problems, right?
Mhm.
I don't learn this very well. Well, maybe we can put you in touch with a tutor or something. Our students, the McMaster Engineering Society, started a tutoring program for students where I think the students put in $5 and the McMaster Engineering Society put in $10 per hour for the tutoring. So it was a low-cost tutoring program. So supports like that,
Mm.
professors' office hours. We changed the first year curriculum in engineering, and previously we had about 70 odd TAs. We've almost doubled that to 140 TAs. So students have access to more TAs, right? So I think
Huge
putting
difference. Yeah.
scaffolding around students, and by scaffolding, what I mean is that if you have a set of stairs, some students are just going to run up. Imagine stairs without any guides on the side, right? Without any handrails on the side. Some students are going to go right up the middle and they're going to shoot up and they're going to reach the roof. But there are others who are going to fall off to the side and they may be in jeopardy. So we've got to put those guardrails to help those students who are not doing well. And I
Mhm.
think that's what we did in many different ways. And I think that if I had one aspiration, it would be to continue that. It would be to deepen learning. The tagline of the Faculty of Engineering says nothing about engineering. It says that we want to educate citizen scholars who want to change the world. So we want to educate citizens who are scholars who want to change the world, who want to transform the world. It says nothing about engineering.
Mhm.
Because the truth is that today, only about 25 or 30% of engineering students actually become engineers. They go on to do other things with their lives, right? So you want them to be citizens. They have to understand their place in society. They have to be scholars. They have to be curious about the world, and they have to want to transform the world. I mean, we should have a calling, right? We should have a calling. My generation and other generations have left a huge debt for you folks, for Damien, you, Fowd, and all your Instagram followers. I mean, think about climate change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about the pandemic. It would not have happened if we didn't have mass deforestation, if we didn't have urban overcrowding.
Mhm.
Things would have been very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these problems are intrinsically tied together. We have a refugee crisis in the world today, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are people who want to migrate from the have not countries to the have countries, which is setting up, let's say, certainly in Europe. And it'll certainly, and we saw that play out over the last few years in the United States, and it might come to Canada, a certain
Yeah.
amount of aversion to immigrants, in some cases, even hatred, uh, you know. So, I talked about fractionation. That's the debt, the check we left for you, which you're the mortgage we've left for you, and you have to find a way out of it, which means that it's my responsibility, our responsibility to educate citizen scholars who will transform the world.
Yeah, it reminds me of this quote. I can't remember who said it, but education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire.
Yeah,
And I think that's what it should really be, right? It's not about dumping knowledge into a student,
yeah,
because what happens is usually when you throw assessments in there, those pails usually have holes in the bottom, and then after the assessment, all the water is gone.
right.
And that's like Fuad and I have talked about this before, but I mean, it's a little weird talking about this because you're here, but but the like for a lot of students these days, most of the real value that we're getting out of our programs don't come from the actual classes themselves, rather than the interactions that we have with the students and the experiences we gain through like co-op programs, right? And for many of us, and like Fuad's a humble guy, so he would never brag about himself like this, but he does a remarkable job of just self-guided learning. Like he goes out of his way to educate himself on the things that he cares about.
Fucking
And
rad, man.
yeah. And again, like super humble guy, so he went and says, so I just want to brag about him for a second. And I just like, how do we get that into like, how do we get that back into schools? You know, and we're seeing today these little microcosms of education popping up, right? Like Google came up with their own little academy. I don't know if it's already out yet or what. I don't know if you know about that, if you know about that, Fuad, but yeah, like they're having classes where you don't have to get an academic and university degree. You can just do those classes, and then you can be qualified to do to join any of their companies. Or and even things like Elon Musk coming out of SpaceX, having little classes for his children and for children of other employees, and they're providing that to other people around the world now too, which is like incredible, right? I would love to have my kid educated by people like that. Like, that sounds amazing. Do you think that we're going to see more of this decentralization of education going forward, or do you think that these legacy institutions will persist over time?
So I'm going to answer your question, but first, if you allow me, I'll take you down a different path,
Let's
right?
go. Let's do it.
So I'm going to flip the script, and I'm going to ask both of you a question. So think about your time at McMaster, and you're only allowed to talk about one seminal experience that shaped you. So just one. So I'll pose that question to both of you, and whoever wants to go first.
I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it on the podcast.
You gotta pick second place, man. Okay, while Damien's thinking, I can probably go first. So you asked one seminal experience throughout my time at university that completely changed.
You can only select
one. One. I think it would have to be my first day at Tesla when I worked there.
Your first day at Tesla, okay.
Yeah, absolutely changed my life.
So Damien, what about you?
For me, I think one of my favorite experiences would have to be I'm sorry, let me collect myself. I was part of a student-led initiative called McMaster Energy Week.
Right.
Yeah, and like that was a fantastic experience. I got really close with the other individuals that were part of that team. And it's just that experience of working with other people to build something, right? That camaraderie that comes out of it. Even like Delta hacks. Like, again, I come from science. I love that they keep it open to non-technical folks as well to introduce that culture of diversity. I found a team of other technologists who were so kind to let this complete novice join them, and I had an amazing time. We stayed up for 36 hours. I stank by the end of it, but that sense of camaraderie again that you get through it, it's such a beautiful thing, and I think that was my favorite part.
So Damien talked about two experiences:
I'm sorry,
Energy Week and Delta Hack. So Fauj, it's only fair that you talk about two. So Tesla was, for your first day at Tesla was one.
First day of
What's
Tesla
up?
was one, and then I think the other was, so me and two of my other friends, we worked on a startup in second year over the summer that was incubated at the Forge. It was called Pickup, and the startup didn't end up going anywhere. Unfortunately, we that's a long story. I'll share it on the podcast sometime. But I think what stood out to me with that experience was I remember there was this one night. It was like 3 a.m. when we were in Hatch, and we had stayed in Hatch way past closing. I don't know if I want to say this either on the podcast. It was way past Hatch was closed. All the doors were locked. We propped open one of the doors and just were studying in this one study room until like 3 or 4 a.m. And it was the same kind of concept, like the camaraderie.
Yeah.
We're up at 3, 4 a.m. on a summer night, beautiful night. We could be doing anything, and we're here working on the startup. So that was probably one of the more
So
standout memories.
the road I'm going to take you on is different. Before I answer Damien's question, when I
Mhm.
came to Mac, somebody gave me a book. He was the director of the McPherson Institute. It was called the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning at that time. And he gave me this book by a professor at Harvard, Richard Light. And the name of the book is Getting the Most Out of College. In the United States, college and university are sometimes synonymous, right? And what Dr. Light did was, Dick Light, what he did was he interviewed alumni at Harvard, and I think that this study went to other universities as well. And they asked this question: what was your one seminal experience? Very few, if any, people talked about that one class that they had, or the one subject that really enthralled them. Almost all of the people just talked about an experience outside of class. So you've done exactly that. So getting the most out of university is not just what happens in class, but it's also what happens out of class. And that's been a big focus for me, is strengthening clubs and teams. You talked about Delta Hacks, McMaster Energy,
We,
Week.
yeah.
As dean, I support those with real cash.
Mm-hmm.
The Hatch Center, we support that with real cash. I mean, we partnered, we raised money, and so on. So out of class activities are very important. And if students are interested in success in a bricks and mortar university, it's learning from the peers, that camaraderie, making mistakes, picking yourself. You said, well, you had Pickup, which was a startup which didn't go anywhere for. But the point is, you probably learned so much, right? You learned
Absolutely.
that you have to fail fast. You learned why you failed, and you picked yourself up. And that's going to be like very, very useful for you for the rest of your life. Same thing with Delta Hacks, 36 hours to solve a problem. Those sorts of sprints are not what we do in classes, right? It's 3 hours, you go to a lecture, you're off, then there's another lecture next week, and then it's interspersed with other lectures, and by week 10, sometimes you forget what was done in week 1. But you do a
Yep.
36-hour sprint, I bet you remember what you did,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
So out of class activities are very important. Now, let me come back to what you were talking about. I think that if bricks and mortar universities do not change, they're going to be in trouble. And so we've launched something called the Micro Credential Academy, which is like the Google example that you were giving. And my ambition is to give anywhere in the world a McMaster Engineering education at any time. And that means that we not only have to focus on students. So you were students, you came to campus and you learned on campus, but you also got other experiences on campus, right? And we had supports, like we had the Career and Co-op Placement Office, which sent FOUDs to Tesla. We now actually have a whole network of alumni at Tesla who help our students when they come and so on. And we didn't have that. I remember going to Silicon Valley with students, and the Tesla relationship came out of that. So I think giving students educational experiences and out-of-class experiences is important, but we also have to think of learners around the world who may not get a McMaster Engineering degree, but they may wish to learn. So, so we are launching this micro-credential program called McMaster Access, which gives anyone anywhere in the world access to McMaster Engineering education. It'll be on 3 levels. Level 1 will be free. It'll just be about fundamentals. So you said FAUD is a self-oriented learner. Any learner in the world, they log on. It's free content. You digest it. You give yourself an assessment. So nowadays I'm learning French on Duolingo. I'm about 39% into the course. At the end of it, will I be fluent in French? Probably not. But the point is, it occupies my time, and I'll be an advanced beginner, and I could at least make out French conversation, and I'll be able to read simple French, right? So this is what it will do in an engineering context for learners around the world. L2 is where you would have to pay a tuition, but it won't be the classical 12.4-week course. It'll be small modules. There'll be 3 hours, 4 hours, and you do these modules, you learn about something, you can stack up those modules, and if you have enough modules, you'll get a certificate of some sort. And that will give you fluency and literacy in the subject, right? The first is just introduction, right? It gives you some idea of a subject. The second is fluency and literacy. And L3 is that if you want to come to our campus and have the same experiences that the both of you had, then you can come, and that's mastery. So the bricks and mortar university, which will be at McMaster, and McMaster Engineering will be the bricks and mortar engineering school, will get these learners and give them mastery. So we have to realize that in the future, not everybody wants mastery, right? Like FAUD has or you have. You may want fluency and literacy in a lot of subjects, but you may only want mastery in a few subjects. It's like deconstructing the degree. I don't know if you're familiar with molecular gastronomy. There are these chefs who will deconstruct a meal, from a very molecular point of view. And then, a taco isn't really a taco, or, a burger isn't really a burger, right?
Yeah.
So the degree won't be a degree. I want to deconstruct the degree. I want to disrupt degree programs. I think there are lots of barriers in the way. There'll be lots of skeptics. When we moved McMaster Engineering to project-based learning a few years ago, people told me I was crazy. They said students won't come. This year, I'm already getting nasty grams from parents who say, my child was the most brilliant child at their school, but they didn't get in because the declination letters are going out. Our cutoffs, for instance, in computer science this year of the order of 95, 96%. I mean, it's crazy. So what we've done in the pivot, this move towards challenge-based learning and project-based learning, has actually attracted students, who are very tired of that old style information dump in a lecture, right? So why does this have me worried? This has me worried because marks aren't everything. And, we moved to a supplementary application to get into McMaster Engineering. But even then, I fear for somebody, I mean, what's the difference between 89.9% marks and 90% marks, or 92.9 and 93% marks? I want to give access to everybody who can come to McMaster. And I think that these micro-credentials, taking these short modules and proving yourself, might be a way for some people, a path into McMaster. We'll see. Always, it's like with startups. Think of me as somebody who's got a lot of startups in educational innovation. If I fail, I want to fail fast and move out of it and pivot to something else. I have the same learnings as FAUD. He and I are equal when it comes to that learning. And so micro-credentials, you asked me about the future of McMaster. We've got all these innovation projects going on. Think of it, just like what X is to Google. You've heard of X?
Yeah.
I don't know what we should call it. X is taken, maybe my initial P, my last name P. So I've got all these P for project. I've got P.MacEng, and P.MacEng is the innovation company with all these projects. We'll see if they succeed.
Amazing.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Oh, man, I had a thought on that. Completely flew by. Anyways, we have 1 minute left in the call, and we want to be respectful of your time, but we have one little last ritual that we ask everybody that we interview on the podcast. So I'll let Fuad go ahead and drop that question.
Yes, and before we do that, I must say there's so many questions we didn't get to, both from